Hello everyone, welcome back to the workshop. Today I want to talk to you about plumb and level and other forms of distance measurement. So we're all used to popping out the spirit level, the laser level, the tape measure, steel rule these days. And okay, we know what the numbers are, and we can work to a superior level of accuracy that has never been known, until measurements were first standardized, during the Industrial Revolution. However, as part of the Centre in the Past project, um, the fantastic researchers at Liverpool Uni who've been working on the project, the academics who've been working on the project until the practical elements started. So this project has quite a bit of age to it, and actually the practical elements are almost the last elements of the project. The research that's gone into this project is outstanding. And if any of you can get to see it when it's at Chester Cathedral, or even come along hopefully on the Wednesday, the 24th of the course, you'll realise just how much work there is involved in that. But they've uncovered in their research just how accurate the vaults are at Chester. And when you think of the time frame that they were built, these are medieval vaults, and they're incredibly accurate. And there were no tape measures, there were no folding rules, there were no steel rules. Everything was done. There were no spirit levels, no lasers, none of that. So everything was done with plumb bobs, plumb sticks, level boards, level sticks, level frames, and things like these wonderful dividers. So that's what I want to talk to you today about, because from the encouragement of Pete Eels, who will be helping me teach, we are actually going to throw away the spirit levels, we're going to throw away the lasers, we're going to throw away the tape measures and the folding rules, the steel rules. It's all going. We're going to go back to an earlier system. We're going to use Pete's just working out the standard measurement unit of measurement that we used on the job. We're getting close now. The last time I spoke to him, he was within 14 mil of a standardized measurement, which was quite common. So when these cathedrals were built, they'd have had their own rod or pole, and all of the masons, the carpenters, and the other craftspeople there would have worked to that standardized measurement for that cathedral. And that's what we're going to aim to do with the Centre in the Past, the 23rd to the 28th of September. So let's have a look at some of the tools that we will be using on that project. So let's start over here, plumb bobs, and we'll start with these two big ones first. And these are lead plumbs. This one's still got a remnant of the string in. And they're incredibly heavy, incredibly big plumb bobs. These, there's three of them. The one's got a piece of wire in it at the minute. It drives me crazy because it's too stiff to swing accurately the wire. These belonged to my wife's, so my wife's great grandfather and my father-in-law's great grandfather. They ran a building company. They were farmers and builders, and they ran a building company, building houses when all the work would have been lime work. And just as cement started to come in, they were using some cement, but only to set lintels. Everything else was done with lime mortar still. So that's how long ago they were working. as builders. But these big plumb bobs would have been used for setting formwork, setting levels, all sorts of things. I'm totally sure what they were. They were actually doing to need three of them the same size, but they've got three. You'll notice the shape. It's a very distinct pear shape. And you'll also notice on this level board, this level stick, a very similar shape, only they are vastly bigger. They are vastly bigger. So we will be using this level stick. You can see it has a line on it with a notch cut in the top of the string. This is an old level stick. It's not hugely old, but it is old. It has some age to it, and it probably was made as a demonstration piece by someone. Unfortunately, I don't have the plumb that fits it. What I am going to do is turn a shape that fits this nicely and use that as a negative to sand cast a lead plumb bob that fits this. So let's go on to some of my plumb bobs. So we'll start with the bigger two here. So this was my dad's one. This I think was a later one. I think probably he had one stolen because this is one that was made in China. I mean, I can remember this being about many years on a piece of copper pipe, and it's okay for transferring measurements from a top plate to a sill plate if you're doing repairs and that sort of thing. He used it a lot for, of all things, actually for setting out wallpaper drops. Mum had got him wallpaper in, he'd have the plumb out, and he would set his line down the wall with his plumb bob for the first drop. I use something similar for the similar purposes. I use this Tajima one, and I use this one because it has this box that the string's in, that when you pull it out, it stays put, but then you can wind it back up. It also has a pin to hold it to timbers. A magnet as well if you're working on steel frames. So yeah, I use that one for the same purposes my father used that one, and they are not dissimilar in size. This one's ever so slightly heavier than this one, but they both have a crude point on the bottom. This one has a better point. So you can transfer marks really well with this type, as you can with this one. This is a modern cheap steel one, and this is probably the one I'm going to put in either another plumb stick or into one of the levels I make, and I'll show you what I mean by level later on in the video. Again, it has a really good point on it. Not a particularly nice plumb bob, not a nice plumb bob to use day-to-day scribing, which is what I actually bought it for, but very cheap and will work well in something like this. While we're on the subject of pointed plumb bobs, let's do the other two, shall we? This one here is one of my favourites. This is a little Veritas one. And I've had this for years or so. It's a lovely small plumb bob. The only thing I don't like about it is the string is quite thick. It's too thick for scribing work, and which is what I brought this plumb bob for. However, this plumb bob is destined for the other, definitely for one of the other levels that we make for the project, because it has such a lovely point. It's nice and small, and it has a lovely point on, so that will denote to a mark like this one at the bottom here. I'll denote that beautifully, and a hole cut out for it. So that's the little Veritas one. It came with this brass holder, and it sits inside your ratchet string around the outside. Not a bad little thing at all, but I have always preferred this one. These are getting quite heavy, getting quite expensive now. This is an Edward Preston, this one, size 2. Edward Preston, this one was made in Birmingham. This one has brick line, string line, chalk line, sorry, in it, but it's an incredibly accurate bob. Um, Balances out really quick. I love this one. However, I'm loath to take it to site now, so I only use it for scribing frames in the workshop, because they are worth so much money now that it wouldn't be worth me replacing it if I ever lost it or it got stolen. So it doesn't very often leave the workshop. So then we come on to this type. Now these are flat plumb bobs. These are more of a French type plumb bob. And we'll start with the smallest one, which is the one I use probably most. Although I made this one myself. So what I used was some copper wire. I twisted the copper wire together to give me a spider, and I wound 3 legs. I then cast it into the bottom of the beer can. I cast the lead into the bottom of the beer can, and as you can see, as it was cooling, it pushed my 15mm copper tube form to one side, and it always did make me swear at the time. The can actually got warm and dropped on one side and allowed the lead to, just before it was fully set, to pull over one side a bit more than the other. Unfortunately, so it doesn't quite sit level. However, it is accurate in, it's accurate for scribing. And you can see I've got it on some very fine string. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So yeah, that one was cast in the bottom of the beer can. I used a copper pipe to hold my copper wire. I cut 3 notches in it, and I putted the end up to stop the lead blowing up the inside. So that bit worked okay. What I didn't do was form a way of making it stay put in the centre of the can. What I should have done was shoved a nail through my ring, filled the whole tube with putty, and pushed that through the base of the can, and then poured in my lead. You live and learn. I've since had the opportunity to cast this one. And you see this one sits on a piece of sort of 2x2, 1.5x2, whatever it is. And the idea of this is that this will sit on the top beam flat, holds the line down through there, and then that will sit up on the top of your timber that you're scribing to, and the plumb bob drops down below. And then the idea of these more French style inspired plumb bobs is for scribing multiple stacks of timber together to form frames. You can see your centre mark, so you can also pick up off the framing floor. So it's important you can see through the centre, pick up off the framing floor. So this one has a stainless steel spider in the centre, and this was cast in a mould owned by the fantastic Tim Potts, who at the time, or who is the director of Carpenters Fellowship projects. It was on a Carpenters Fellowship projects build. We were in Andover on the Harmony Woods project down there, building their timber framed barn. And one afternoon, Tim said, "Oh, I've got the mould with me and I've got some lead with me. Let's cast some plumb bobs." So we all had a go, and unfortunately, as you can see, by the time I got around to mine, the mould was incredibly hot and was beginning to get distorted. By the time we managed to get mine out, it ended up slightly bent. I was the last person to have a go with it. But it sits flat, it hangs plumb, so that's all we need to know. It's not pretty, but it is a very functional plumb bob. I then, the year before, at the Splinter Frame event in Devon, so the Carpenters Fellowship Splinter Frame was a 2-day event. I managed to pick up this absolute beauty. For this one, see, that's the date on it, 2005. TFG and CF, which is Timber Framers Guild, which is the American version of the Carpenters Fellowship, which is what the CF is. And it says, Whitnam Clumps Rendezvous, UK 2005. So imagine the work that went into making a mould with the lettering in. Yeah, good you see it in clumps. Rendezvous UK 2005. This has a copper coloured spider in the centre that's really, really fine. They really are a perfect plumb bob. This one really is beautiful. And I brought it, I can't remember what I paid for it, I didn't pay a lot of money for it, but I brought it because it's a good example of what it is, and I want it. I do like this type of plumb bob scribing work. I brought it off a retiring carpenter um, who actually cast it at Whitman Clumps because they're all casting their own. So there you go. A bit of CF history, a bit of Carpenters Fellowship and Timber Framing Guild history that I've managed to acquire. I wasn't there. I was off doing crazy things, forestry work and all sorts in 2005. So fencing and that sort of thing. So yeah, before I really got back into the carpentry side, the joinery side. So on these fine plumb bobs, you'll see I use a green cord. And what I actually use is this braided fishing line. The reason being it's incredibly fine. And because it's braided, it doesn't stretch. I've used mono fishing line in the past, and it will stretch if you give it you give the bob like that, and you can stretch the line. This is incredibly tough stuff, and actually you can see that stuff there has been in there that long that it's faded right out through use and sunlight and what have you. So that is the same as that. So that's what I use. So that's what I use. I use a braided fishing line. It's incredibly tough. It's also in a bright colour like the green or pink or what have you. It's easy to see when you're scribing, so you can it contrasts well with your black line. I don't actually like white lines for scribing. They don't do my eyes any good. So I'll insert now a photo of a level which is from the Doctrine of Handiworks by Joseph Moxon. Very similar to this plumb stick, only it works like you would use a speed square. So if you take a plumb bob, if you plonk it in the notch of a speed square and you plonk the bottom of the triangle, the long side of the triangle onto the surface, that'll hang plumb if the work's plumb. So that is what I'm going to use. So I'll insert a photo now. But this is what the masons, it's what the carpenters were all using on these projects. They weren't using spirit levels because they weren't invented by them. Right. So then we'll have a quick look at the dividers. So these are both older dividers. These are some of the, particularly this set are some of the oldest ones I've got in my collection. And again, we'll be using these for setting out, for the finer setting out, both of mortise width and mortise length. Will all be set out using dividers and scribe and that sort of thing. So all the mortise widths will be set from the chisel using a pair of dividers and will be marked manually onto the work in the right position, and that will then be drop scribed down from the tenons down into the mortise locations, again using dividers, and we'll set the dividers whatever the drop needs to be, and we'll take a mark from the top base, top cheek of the tenon, and we'll drop it and we'll mark the top location of the mortar. So there's very valuable lessons in layout coming as part centre in the past, and also geometry. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're enjoying these videos. I do enjoy making them, and I will continue to make them as long as people continue to watch them, like them, subscribe, etc. Yeah, so that's really all I've got to say, guys, apart from sorry this video is coming out on a Wednesday. I will run tomorrow's video, which will be Thursday. I'll run on Friday. I'll drop on Friday. I just never had a chance yesterday to get this video in the can, and having been away last week, I haven't had a chance to get a lot down. It's just crazy here at the minute with work, with sheep and broken vehicles, etc. So normal service will resume on Sunday this week. It'll be Wednesday and Friday. 2 shorter videos come out. Thank you all so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.